Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Brooks Allen, and I am the training manager at Indianapolis Neighborhood Resource Center, which is INRC. And also on the Zoom meeting tonight is my coworker or two coworkers. Danae Freeman is our engagement manager. So all of the nice social media work that you see comes off of Danae's desk. So we're definitely proud and happy to have her on our team. And we also have Sharon Logan, who is our Director of Neighborhood Services. And Sharon has been with INRC over 11 years. So she's a pro at all things neighborhood, and we're definitely excited to have her on the call as well. I also want to make you aware that we have enabled our closed caption and translation. So if you need to use that, please feel free to. The information session will flow as I will introduce the presenters, and then the presenters will present their information. And we typically have Q&A at the end, but I think Kheprw will allow you to do some questions during their presentation. So they will basically guide us on what their concept will be. So without further ado, I will introduce Deidre Coleman. And Deidre is the Community Engagement Connector at Kheprw. And Deidre will get us started, and she will introduce the rest of her staff.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay, great. If you could indulge us at every Kheprw meeting, we try to have a wellness check-in. And if everybody could just type into the chat from 1 to 10 how you're feeling. If your feeling was a number from 1 to 10, 10 being feeling amazing, and what color it would be. And then the other takeaway, we usually have a question: what would you like to get from this presentation? And I'll start us off. I'm a 9.3, went on 2 walks with Alvin today.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And my color is fuchsia. And what I'd like to take away is how you felt about this presentation. That'd be so helpful and valuable to us. So if you could just put that in the chat, we'll get started. And thank you so much for inviting us and allowing us to present tonight. So I'm going to jump right in. Again, my name is Deidre Coleman, and I've been part of Kheprw family for over 20 years. My son, now 27, went through the program and will forever be part of Kheprw. I'm currently, again, the Community Engagement Connector and part of the CLT team. And I'd like to allow the, well, Alvin got up, so I'll wait until he comes back so they can introduce themselves. But the CLT, which is the Community Land Trust, comes out of Kheprw's work to develop community leaders, institutions, and build community wealth. And so now I would like our other team members to introduce themselves, please. And so, Alvin.
Okay, hey everybody, Alvin Sankswoggle here. Actually an INRC and Public Allies alumni from about 12, 13 years ago. So good to see you, Sharon, and everybody else from the crew. So I have been a part of Kheprw for about 12, 13 years. I'm originally from Indianapolis, grew up on the northeast side in the Lawrence area. I went to school out in Los Angeles and then spent some time abroad in Thailand, which is where my dad's originally from. And then came back to Indianapolis about 13 years ago to find home and community again. And a big part of that was doing Public Allies and AmeriCorps, and through that met a whole lot of different people, including Kheprw Institute. So I came to a Kheprw event and haven't left. I was the weird kid, one weird kid out of 30 who doesn't leave, and they haven't kicked me out, so I'm still here. So It's been a transformative journey and an amazing ride, and really like a family and community. And a
Yes.
big part of Kheprw's work that really just is powerful to me is the idea of, yes, looking at what is challenging in the world, but also looking at how do we create the kind of communities that we want to live in, whether that's around housing, food, or even our relationships to each other, striving to be the kind of community that we want to live in and be in. So
Absolutely.
with that, I'll pass it to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Stephanie Gallardo, one of the newer members of the Kheprw team, been with them for about a year. I was familiar with some of the work while I was in grad school doing my master's of social work degree. And a little over a year ago, they gave one of their first community conversations around the Community Land Trust. And I had heard about this concept in grad school, and it was something I was really passionate about, thinking that it could be a great tool here in Indianapolis. And so I came up to Alvin after the presentation and said, "This sounds great, and I think it'll be a lot of work. I'd love to help." And after a few conversations, they said, "Sure, come aboard," and here we are now. So excited to be with you all and looking forward to your feedback tonight. And I'll turn it back over to Dee.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna play a 4-minute video about our Kheprw story. And just wanted you to know the agenda is gonna flow. We're gonna do the history of CLT, CLT 101, and Indy CLT, break that down. And then we welcome your input. And as we stated earlier, throughout the presentation, if you ever have any questions or want any clarity, your valued interaction is very important to us. So yeah, so we're going to jump right in now and start with the video.
Okay, if you can't hear something or see it, just holler.
Community means something different round here. Love's breeding ground born new, blossoming into barraging stories of blackness, banter, and bustle through blues like blood couldn't make us any closer. This be communion.
Growing community is like growing food. It's a lot of work. You gotta till the soil. You gotta plant the seeds. You gotta have the right weather conditions. So community is just like that. You start with what you have where you are.
Kheprw is a nonprofit grassroots organization that was created roughly about 20 years ago. And when it was created by my father, my mother, and my godmother. They're the 3 co-founders. And they created it to help me, Miss Paulette's grandson, my lifelong, he's like a brother, Ijaz. Some of my partners I grew up with, Jerome and Jerome, in my neighborhood. It's basically like, how do we create a formal experience for these young black men to grow, thrive?
The birth of Kheprw is about, again, inherently, the crux of Kheprw is tied to liberation and freedom. Freedom to me is having a goal or goals, aspirations, dreams, visions, and missions, and being able to have the opportunity to fulfill those goals, aspirations, visions, and missions.
Empowerment means to me like you get something right. You do what you want to do. You figure out what's your goal and you set your goal.
Running to get it like I'm in the Olympics, but there is no finish. We gotta keep going, so I set the pace. Handle with grace, the person I need to be leading the race. Ballin' like I never balled before. Flexing forever like 24. Taking the keys, open all the doors. Linings to cover up all the sores. Give it your best and the world adores. This is for certain, I'm so for sure.
We live in a culture, when you think of wealth, you think of money. How much money you got? What's your credit rating? Do you have any intergenerational wealth? Do you own a home or home ownership? Blah, 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 blah. If you're not careful when you think community wealth, then the folks start thinking, oh, you're talking about how rich your community is. How much fiscal assets does it have? But wealth itself really is much broader than that. It's your intellectual wealth. You know, what kind of information do you know? Others in your community, what do they know? Breadth and depth of your relationship with others in your community. Spiritual wealth, faith, your heart, music, art, you know, those things all make up wealth in your community.
And we're going to pause it there. The full video, if you search the Kheprw story on YouTube or go to Kheprw.org. And also shout out to Ken Rhodes, who produced it, who was a youth in Kheprw who started when he was 7. I think he's now 27 and living in LA as a filmmaker.
Yes, yes. So now we're going to transition and actually show our Indianapolis. Okay. And if you want to know more information about Kheprw, I'm sorry, there's our QR code right up on the screen. If you scan it, it'll take you to our community engagement form. And if you fill that out, we can get back with you and you can let us know about any of the other work that we do that may interest you. So thank you so much for that. And as we transition into our NDCLT.
Give us 1 second.
Yep. Shout out to Alvin.
And this one, shout out to Shane Shepard on producing this video, who's a very enterprising young man who's working with us doing videos.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would say the Indianapolis CLT really comes out of Kheprw's community wealth building work. So.
What is a community land trust? Community land trusts are nonprofit community-based organizations tasked with holding land permanently in trust for the benefit of the people in the community. CLT land can be used for many types of development, including commercial and agricultural uses, but CLTs are primarily used to ensure long-term housing affordability. CLTs are governed by a board of directors made up of housing residents, community representatives, and members of the general public. To hear more about the Community Land Trust, stay tuned to hear some of our Kheprw leaders speak about the Community Land Trust and the benefits thereof.
What community means to me is the environment you create for yourself through your relationships that allow you to be. It's the shallow lake out by your house that you can let your kids go jump in and play in. Community is that space where you know that you're not by yourself. The most wonderful thing about Community Land Trust is you are a community. In a Community Land Trust, you own the house. The land is held in collective. Everyone puts in a little for their own home, which builds, and you're able to not only help fund what you need, but what others need.
One of the things that make me a real big advocate for CLTs is I remember being a 20-year-old with my first daughter born and getting our first apartment and, 500 square feet and paying rent and really not seeing a future in terms of how that was going to benefit me long term. What the CLT offers is not only do you get affordability because the CLT looks at your individual household income. When you get an apartment or you get a house that you want to rent, basically as long as you can afford to make the rental payment, the landlord really doesn't have too many issues. But with the CLT, they're looking much deeper into your financial profile. For example, they not only want you to be able to afford the monthly payment, but they want you to be able to include your utilities, your taxes, your principal, your interest, your insurance, and into a percentage of your total income that really makes it more affordable for you so that you can have discretionary income to also do something that's just as important. It's one of the ways that the CLT really separates itself, because you're trying to make sure that people are living in somewhere safe and secure, but it's affordable, but it's also opening it up and making sure that people aren't house poor, either from buying a home or from renting a home, where basically we define house poor as anyone who's paying more than 30% of their income just for basic living necessities, which is primarily rent or mortgage.
So you have a partner in the homeowner process. It's not just like me on my own, that's it. I have somebody that cares about my family dynamics, what it is we need, and able to provide an alternative to just market rate. And dealing with the banks, you deal with lenders that care about the community, care about the social capital and human capital of a family, of a person, opposed to me going at it on my own. I like that model that you have support from community, you have the support of people that are invested in your home ownership being a success.
Well, for me and anybody else who owns a house, building wealth is different from policies that allow real estate people to come in and buy up houses for little and then rent them for much. That's a policy issue. And so you feel like if you do vote, things don't change. Well, if you don't vote, they really don't change in your favor. As anyone knows who owns a house, not be able to pay the taxes, you done for. The state comes and gets your house. And so the idea of home ownership then becomes a collection of people who own the land together, but the house belongs to you. I'm not in it by myself. I'm not going down by myself. I have community to make sure that I'm good so that the community can be strong and we all can be good.
As the Community Land Trust movement gains momentum in Indianapolis, it is the perfect time to explore opportunities for involvement. For detailed information on how you can contribute to a community land trust, visit indyclt.org. Thanks for watching.
All right. Shout out again to Shane Shepherd. And that website is coming soon.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the history of CLT. So community land trusts are drawn from ancient principles that date back centuries. Indigenous peoples all over believed land was a communal resource given by God, not property to be bought and sold. So the origins of today's community land trust can be traced to various global movements, including the Garden Cities of England, excuse me, grandma villages in India, and the most Shah communities in Israel. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So this next slide shows us 4 of the 8 individuals that were on a delegation in June of 1968. 8 of the individuals from the United States traveled to Israel for the purpose of studying agricultural cooperatives on leased land. And their hope was that they could bring back the knowledge to start something in South Georgia. So these were American sharecroppers, tenants, and farmers who were being forced off the land because of their participation in civil rights movement. And one of these people was Charles Sherrod, and he's the gentleman you see here. And we're going to show a short video of him, and you'll see in a moment the video that talks a little bit about how he started the CLT and why. But he was a pioneer during that time. And the fact that they went to Israel to do their research was really phenomenal, and the things that they was able to do. And it was the first CLT in the United States. And this excerpt is from YouTube as well. We're just going to show a piece of it. New Communities East, Inc. Sorry.
How many people whose doors I've knocked on got kicked out of their homes with their children, without a job. And I was partially the cause of it. So I lived in deep guilt and frustration. So that's how the spark of the need for land came to me. Seeing the land, just the land itself, the beauty of the land, the purity of the land, and the acknowledgement that all power comes from the land, and the land comes from God. All power comes from the land. Absolute power comes from God. And that's my ministry. It's still my ministry. You would own your home, but you would lease the land underneath your home. So that's the main idea that we brought back to Southwest Georgia. More cooperative living, cooperative buying, cooperative selling, cooperative, just about everything cooperative.
So we started having meetings when they returned in July and decided to create this organization that would be called New Communities. And Slater King was very much involved. He was the brother of C.B. King, who was the only black lawyer. Slater was the only black real estate agent.
At some point, we recognized that economic opportunity was in some ways connected to civil rights, and that economic opportunity also meant the opportunity for independence of a kind that we really had not had, except within segregated communities.
I got on the road and kissed my wife goodbye. Said, I'm going to get this money. And I raised it. Somehow I raised it over $1 million.
Black people, even if they were not involved, felt proud that we could actually get our hands on that much land. You know, land meant power. You know, land established you as somebody.
We had a list of 500 families who were willing to go to live on this land the way we proposed to live.
So we had a health committee, we had an education committee, we had a committee dealing with industry, we had a farm committee.
Some of us were naive enough to believe that having been called lazy, not up to anything, ignorant, that white people would praise us that we're finally doing something for ourselves, on our own, with our own money, with our own resources, and sticking together.
Didn't think people would fight you when you were trying to simply help yourself. You're not asking them for anything. So I was really shocked at the opposition, the shooting at our buildings. I mean, they just came at us in every way to try to stop us, to block us, to do anything to get that land away from us.
And we found out they were diluting our fertilizer. They wouldn't give us loans.
Okay, does anybody have any thoughts about the video or anything stand out to you? I know it was a lot of information, even though it was a clip, but it's always poignant to me. We'll check the chat and see if there's any questions about it that we can address. But New Communities, Inc., the prototype for the modern day community land trust, was again established in Albany, Georgia in 1969 for the purpose of combating discrimination in land rights and lending. And it was backed by a federal grant. New Communities, Inc., again, acquired the 6,000 acres of farm and woodland, which made up the largest tract of Black-owned land at the time. But at the end of the planning phase, the governor vetoed a grant, which started a 15-year battle to hold on to the land. This battle was lost in 1985 after a series of disasters, both natural, drought, and man-made, like shots fired in the offices, denials of loans, and diluted fertilizer. The property was foreclosed on, and those in the CLT were forced off the land. The new owners wanted to rid the land of anything that would remind them of the previous owners, so they dug holes in the ground and pushed all the buildings into them. New Communities, Inc. became part of a class action suit and eventually won and received a settlement. And the proceeds from the settlement, they purchased 1,638 acre Cypress Pond plantation property. And the interesting thing is the Cypress plantation was the largest slaveholder of the time. So how ironic is that? But they still do have the property today doing unique work. And it serves as a catalyst for growth to individuals, healing in the community, and transformation across the globe. And then the new property has been renamed as Risora. So if you ever see that name, Risora, that's the name of it now. Yeah. So moving on, CLT expansion. You look in following the founding of New Communities, Inc., Community Land Trust began to spring up in other states and spread quickly into cities in the 80s. The model has been adopted in many countries, including Canada, Kenya, Australia, the UK, and Puerto Rico, always tailored to meet local needs. And from a local standpoint, these are the CLTs in Indiana. In South Bend, the South Bend Heritage Foundation closed on their first CLT home in December 2023, and they have another house closing soon. In Hamilton County, they have a CLT. They're launching this year as well. And the Indianapolis CLT hopes to open our applications during this first quarter of 2024. In Bloomington, Indiana, there are two CLTs, Community Land Trust, Summit Hill CLT, and Avalon CLT. Finally, in Evansville, Indiana, they have 9 homes with first right of a refusal and are working on their CLT bylaws. So there's good movement on CLT development right here in our region.
And there's some questions. How many land trusts do we know of? There's about 300 nationwide, at least in the United States. I'm not sure internationally.
Have you heard about the Louisville Affordable
Housing Trust Fund? So there's a question. Have we heard about the Louisville Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Is the CLT different? No, I haven't specifically heard about the Louisville Housing Trust Fund, but usually housing trust funds are used to fund affordable housing development. Sometimes it has to do with preventing homelessness, so like Indianapolis has an affordable housing trust fund. Louisville does have a community land trust that I think is starting up now as well.
Right. I was telling us about that today. Okay, so if we have addressed everything, I'm going to pass the baton to Stephanie. Thank you.
Woo.
Thank you, team.
I have a reaction
Appreciate it.
after
All right, let's dig in a bit, shall we? The Classic Community Land Trust is an independent nonprofit organization that serves a defined geographic service area. For us, it'll either be Marion County or Indianapolis, to be decided by our board in the next couple of months. Membership is open to anyone within that defined service area. This is one of the elements that makes the Classic Community Land Trust unique. Instead of just serving the direct beneficiaries, those who live or work on land trust land, the Community Land Trust is accountable to the entire membership and our entire community. CLTs have a tripartite board, so the board is divided into 3 equal groups of representatives. The first third is made up of leaseholders, people living on or using CLT land. The second third is made up of community members. The third group is made up of technical experts, funders, or other stakeholders in the community. Because 2/3 of the board is made up of community members, they hold the majority of the votes and the power. That is part of why we say that community land trusts are community-controlled organizations. CLTs use a dual ownership model in order to secure the property for the common good and to ensure that it is affordable long term. In a dual ownership structure, the individual, most frequently an under-resourced homebuyer, purchases and owns just the improvements, the house. The community land trust retains ownership of the land underneath of the home. And a 99-year ground lease ties these together, and it does a few very important things. First, it outlines the rights and responsibilities of both the homeowner and the community land trust. Second, it establishes use restrictions, like requiring the homeowner to live in the property as their primary residence. And third, it establishes affordability restrictions. CLTs can be passed down to future generations. The land remains the property of the CLT, and the new owner would take on the original ground lease. Before we move on, we're going to check in. It looks like we have a couple things in the chat. How does someone get an application? Great question, and we will get there, I promise. So stay tuned. Thank you, Dee. I see that you kind of gave some more information there. Any other questions before we move on? All right, we'll keep going, but we're going to check in throughout. Oh, sorry, did somebody say something? Sharita, maybe? Oh, maybe that was an accident. No worries. Oh, we got something else in the chat. Can you pay off your portion early? And maybe I'll feel that to Alvin.
Yeah, and I think Stephanie's going to cover this in a little bit. CLT home ownership often is very similar to regular home ownership where you have a mortgage. So you could pay off the mortgage early, but Stephanie's going to go over some details on how it's different from normal home ownership or standard market home ownership.
All right, we're going to continue on. Perpetual affordability restrictions are what make community land trusts different from other forms of affordable housing development. CLTs ensure that the homes that they develop are affordable not only for that first home buyer, but for future generations. They do this by removing the land and the home from the speculative market, reselling the same home over and over again using resale restrictions. CLTs use public subsidies to lower the initial price of a home to a level that's affordable to the target home buyer. They can do this in a few different ways, by subsidizing the cost of construction or acquisition, or using that money to help a home buyer purchase an existing home. But regardless of how it's done, by bringing the home into the land trust, they remove it from the market,
Remember, we never sell the land that we acquire, and therefore resell the same home over and over again. When an eligible home buyer purchases a CLT home, they sign a ground lease that upfront outlines how the resale will work, including their maximum sale price and the eligibility factors for the new buyers. When that subsequent buyer purchases the home, they sign a new 99-year ground lease and agree to sell at a resale restricted price. And this happens again and again, which is how the CLT homes are affordable on a long-term basis. Let's dig in a little bit more into our fixed rate resale formula. So the resale formula price equals the home's initial sales price, which is after factoring in the affordability grant, plus a fixed increase of 2% of the initial price per home. So for example, if a $175,000 home was made affordable for a home buyer for a $100,000 mortgage, that home would accrue 2% or $2,000 every year for that home buyer as long as they stayed in the home. So if they were there for 10 years, that would be $20,000 of equity that home buyer would have. The benefit of this is that it's predictable. I don't know a lot of other places on the market where you know exactly 10 years from now, if you were to sell your home, this is what you would walk away with. It's transparent, and it allows stability where, let's say, one neighborhood is actually decreasing in values, another is increasing, and we have varying markets. This keeps everything stable for these home buyers. So these are some benefits here. Now I'm going to dig in a little bit more, and then we'll pause for questions in a couple more slides. The way that permanently affordable homeownership programs make the homes initially affordable is by closing the affordability gap. Let's say that the average market price of a home is $200,000, but the family that we're working with can only afford to purchase a $155,000 home. That's a $45,000 gap between what the family can afford and what a home on the market cost. This is our affordability gap. And unfortunately, in many communities, including here in Indianapolis, where market values increase at a rate faster than our incomes do, this affordability gap just gets bigger. And again, we don't expect that our pots of subsidy are going to grow with this need. Our goal is to be forward-thinking and to address these future needs, in part right now by ensuring that the homes that we create remain affordable for under-resourced home buyers. Now I'm going to take you through a couple of scenarios to help you understand how the CLT is different than other programs. Let's start with a more traditional model of affordable homeownership, something like a down payment assistance grant. In this fictional case, the city offers under-resourced homebuyers a grant to help them purchase a home on the market, and the city doesn't expect any kind of repayment on the grant. In this example, the market price of the home is $200,000, but the homebuyer can only afford to purchase a $155,000 home. So there's a $45,000 gap between what they can afford and the market value of the home. And the city gives the homebuyer a $45,000 grant to fill that gap, and that homebuyer purchases the home. 10 years later, the homeowner is ready to sell. Their home has gone up in value to $275,000. So that is their sales price. Since the program that made the home affordable in the first place was grant-based, no money comes back to the city or to the program. It stays with the seller. The homeowner walks away with the $75,000 that the home appreciated, plus the $45,000 grant, which is that total of $120,000 that you see here. This is on top of their own equity, like their original down payment and what they've paid down of their mortgage. Well, this might be super amazing for that one home buyer. It doesn't make much of a dent in the need for affordable housing and could even contribute to gentrification. The need for affordable homeownership opportunities hasn't gone away. There are still more families to serve. So 10 years later, this program needs to help a new family purchase a new home on the market. In this example, market values have risen to $275,000. But as we know, our increases in our raises and our incomes don't often keep up with the market value. In our example, our new home buyer can afford a $185,000 home, but now there's a bigger gap Now $90,000 that needs to be filled to help a similar family purchase a similar home. If this was our only way of creating affordable homeownership opportunities, we would consistently require more money, making it harder to really address our community's need for affordable housing. The CLT model is done differently. The subsidy stays with the property instead of with the homeowner. Let me explain. In this example, we have the same house, the same home buyer, and the same $45,000 gap. But instead of providing that grant to the home buyer, we're going to invest that subsidy to stay in the home. So our home buyer purchases the home from the Community Land Trust for the below market price of $155,000. 10 years later, our home is still increased in value, but CLT homeowners don't sell for the market value of the home. They sell for an agreed upon resale restricted price. In this case, $185,000. So that's that 2% per year that we talked about. The program portion actually grows. It's $90,000, the difference between the market value and the new sales price, but it stays in the home to assist the next buyer. The seller walks away with $30,000 plus any equity like their original down payment and what they pay down off their mortgage, and can put that into a home on their traditional home market or use it however they may wish. The key difference in the CLT model is that the initial subsidy stays with the home to keep it affordable for future home buyers. So instead of needing to help the next buyer purchase a $275,000 home on the market with an even bigger affordability gap, the CLT helps them to purchase the resale restricted CLT home for $185,000. The CLT doesn't need to invest any more money to help home buyers purchasing a home that was already a part of the CLT. That is how we maximize public investments. They put them to work for generation after generation of under-resourced home buyers. Now I realize that the real world is not as simple as this example, but hopefully you're seeing the difference between the two models and what could be possible. So I see we got some questions here in the chat. Let's check in and see what you're thinking. Okay. Are these homes new built or already existing homes? And Dee said it depends on the city and the CLT. Some build new homes, some work with existing homes, and we're still figuring out some of those details for what will work here in Indianapolis. Who's responsible for the repairs? And we're going to cover this a little bit more, but it's really the homeowner. And they're also responsible for taxes, just as a normal homeowner would be. Any other questions before we move on? I don't see anything, but we'll keep checking, okay? CLTs also know that promising to make a home permanently affordable doesn't result in the home actually being permanently affordable. That requires oversight and support, which falls under the broad category of stewardship. CLTs do three kinds of stewardship at once. They steward the structures or the actual home. If the home is to stay affordable, it needs to remain in good condition. So CLTs do things like require that the home has enough insurance and approve significant changes to the home. They can also educate homeowners about preventative maintenance, encourage improvements to the home, and help homeowners through renovations to prevent contractor fraud. CLTs also steward the homeowners. While CLTs can't sell for the full market value of their home, CLTs try to design resale formulas to balance the ongoing affordability with wealth creation. And we know that for homeowners to be able to create wealth, they can't just become homeowners. They need to be able to stay in their home for that wealth to accrue. So CLTs do things like require home buyer counseling before purchase. They also review all mortgage and refinance documents to prevent predatory lending. In some cases, CLTs also offer post-purchase counseling and foreclosure prevention counseling to help homeowners who may want or need it. Finally, CLTs also steward the public funds or the subsidy used to make the home affordable in the first place. Every CLT makes a promise that this money will serve generation after generation of homeowners. The key to that success is resale restrictions, which is what keeps the home affordable. To make good on their promise, CLTs oversee every element of resale, including calculating the formula price and making sure that the next home buyer is income certified. Historically, there were a lot of homes available for first-time home buyers. There was those homes that were $50,000, $70,000 that even a 25-year-old might be able to afford. But as you may know, if you've looked on the market recently, this is no longer the case. And households with lower incomes are being forced to continue paying increasing rent and oftentimes substandard housing. The Community Land Trust adds another step between renting and traditional homeownership, bridging that gap to traditional homeownership for those currently priced out. A report from the National League of Cities and the Grounded Solutions Network found that CLT homeowners accumulate approximately $14,000 in equity when they sell their home, and almost 60% go on to purchase a market rate home after selling. So once again, kind of showing that that's bridging that gap. That $14,000 that they may have accrued in equity is a great down payment on that next home that may suit their needs in a different, as their family has grown, and also allow them to be in the traditional market for further wealth creation. So there are trade-offs with anything, right? This is one tool that may be right for some. So having to qualify for a mortgage, we recognize this will automatically lock out some homeowners, particularly impacting people of color and people who have immigrated or don't have documentation. We recognize that that is currently the case, and that is a trade-off with this program because they will, just like any other major purchase, have to go through a bank for financing, and we're working with lenders. It doesn't allow for as much wealth creation as traditional homeownership because there is that resale formula that we talked about. However, it's not really the difference between renting or buying, because potential renters who cannot afford to purchase a home can use the CLT to become homeowners. The CLT will provide up to $100,000 in subsidy to purchase a home. These options provide opportunities for people to acquire equity and eventually purchase their own home on the traditional market if they wish to do so, not necessarily in that CLT. Some benefits for the home buyer include, obviously a very much reduced price. That's a pretty significant benefit. A safe loan with a fixed rate for financing. Stable house costs. So things like property taxes or insurance could fluctuate a little bit, but that's oftentimes not nearly what somebody rate could change when they're renting. And it's really subjective up to that landlord. So it's much more stable than what renters are often experiencing. Additionally, they get membership in a community with built-in support from our team and the CLT staff. On the community side, it provides homeownership opportunities for those who've traditionally not been able to take advantage of them. It conserves the land and protects the condition of affordable housing so that we can keep using it. The resale restrictions protect the community investment, keeping the home affordable for multiple generations. And we hope that this can be a tool to combat gentrification and displacement. So I'll check in again. Let's see where we're looking at. We talked a little bit about repairs. And yes, we can, with the CLT, it's definitely a normal mortgage in that you're going to have escrow with the insurance and the taxes and the monthly principal all in one. And then the bank will take care of paying out those pieces for the insurance and the taxes. Are we looking to save a certain family size? Not yet, but it's more based off of income. We'll talk about that shortly. And is this similar to a land cooperative? And we'll get a little more information there so we can better address that question. Okay, so now we really want to hear from you before Alvin dives in a little bit more about what this might look like here specifically in Indianapolis. What challenges do you see? Do you see the CLT as having value? And if so, for who? We'd love for you to put your responses here in the chat. Love to see what your initial thoughts are, as well as provide any feedback or questions about the conversation so far. See, we got something here. So thank you. We'll just pause here for a second because we really do want to hear from you to see what your initial thoughts are. This is really important to us. We want this to be engaging and really truly a conversation because we are still figuring some things out and want to make sure that this is going to work here in Indy for our community. All right, well, we'll continue. Oh, go ahead, Alvin. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good
All
stuff.
right.
Good job.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I want to take a little 10-second pause, everyone. We've been talking for a little bit. So however you're able to, take a quick deep breath. And we're going to do two more. In. Out. In. And out.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So this is, I promise this is the last leg of the presentation, and we're just going to open it up as a discussion. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like here. And we're going to start with a short 13-minute video. And what was raised already was the word gentrification. So I think, as all of y'all know, housing prices, interest rates, and rents have been going up like crazy. So it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So we're going to watch this video that dives a little bit into some of the questions and looking at what CLTs look like.
Kensington Market is one of the most culturally significant neighborhoods in Toronto. It's a chaotic mixture of over 30 different cultures expressed through its shops, artwork, music, and food, all crammed into a 4x4 block area. Squeeze all of Toronto's cultures into one neighborhood, and it might look like this. How did it happen? Well, it all started with immigrants moving here and saying, "F you to zoning bylaws." In the early 1900s, Jewish newcomers moved here and began to open stores in their Victorian houses, selling everything from produce and milk to deli meats and live chickens. In the following decades, the neighborhood welcomed wave after wave of new immigrants, including Italians, Ukrainians, Afro-Caribbeans, Jamaicans, Hungarians, Portuguese, Indians, Chinese, Koreans, Vietnamese, who also said "F you to zoning bylaws" and also set up businesses in their houses. And over the years, this law-bending melting pot of cultures proved to be an ideal home for other renegade groups as well, like queer artists, hippies, and punks. Basically, if you weren't your typical white-bread Canadian, this was a welcoming community for you. Today, this history has made Kensington Market a beloved neighborhood that symbolizes Toronto's diversity and entrepreneurial spirit. It's been featured in music videos, TV shows, documentaries, it was designated a National Historic Site, and it even has its own heritage minute.
By bringing newcomers shoulder to shoulder to build new lives together.
The reason I bring this up is because Kensington Market is changing, and not like in the ways it's changed before. People love it today, which of course means so does the real estate and tourism industry. Property values in Kensington Market have skyrocketed, resulting in a ton of redevelopment pressure, increasingly unaffordable rents, and short-term rentals like Airbnbs displacing long-time residents. But this change isn't just affecting renters either. Commercial rents have sometimes tripled overnight, leading to many historic small businesses and grocery stores closing to make way for trendy shops, restaurants, and way too many weed stores for some reason. There have even been proposals to introduce a Starbucks, a Loblaws, or a Walmart here. Kensington Market's story isn't uncommon. There are culturally significant neighborhoods all across North America today facing market pressures that threaten to erase the community that made it so valuable in the first place. And I'll be honest with you, I used to think that there's not much you can do about this sort of change. Neighborhoods evolve, and sometimes they become viral influencer tourist traps. But what's happening here in Kensington Market is kind of changing my mind. Our story starts here, 5456 Kensington Avenue. In 2018, this property was bought by investors to be turned into a weed-themed Airbnb, and the 12 tenants living here were given 3 months to vacate the building. But this is where the story takes a turn. You see, there was a ton of pushback from tenants and the broader community about this eviction, which pressured the new owners to eventually put the property back up for sale. And that is when a nonprofit group called the Kensington Market Community Land Trust bought this building. Today, 5456 Kensington Avenue is owned by this nonprofit organization who manages the land and building and guarantees its long-term affordability. Okay, great. We saved one property, but that's just a drop in the bucket. What about the rest of the neighborhood? What are they going to do? Buy up all of Kensington Market? Well, kind of. You see, the main reason why Kensington Market Community Land Trust exists is to acquire properties in Kensington Market for the community. Whenever a property comes up for sale in this neighborhood, this organization will make an effort to acquire it rather than see it sold off to another private buyer. And with each new property, the Community Land Trust gains a larger and larger voice over how their neighborhood changes. In fact, they're currently working on more properties right now, like this parking lot at 25 Bellevue Avenue. The plan here is to use that land to build non-market housing. But this isn't just happening in Kensington Market. Community land trusts are increasingly being used to protect culturally significant neighborhoods all across North America. Take Boston's Chinatown, the downtown east side in Vancouver, the Bronx in New York, Toronto's Chinatown, San Jose, Harlem, New York, the Parkdale neighborhood in Toronto, Logan Square in Chicago, Atlanta, and many, many other neighborhoods. People are forming community land trusts to acquire properties in response to real estate pressures. So that begs the question, what even is a community land trust? In the broadest sense, community land trusts are nonprofit organizations that acquire and manage land at the direction of their membership, which is typically open to residents and other stakeholders. That membership decides on what their community needs and uses their land to address those needs. For example, if the neighborhood needs more affordable housing, they could lease some of the land to a co-op or nonprofit housing provider. If they'd like to support arts and culture, they could develop studio spaces or performing venues. If the goal is to celebrate Toronto's natural wildlife, they could build a raccoon petting zoo, hypothetically. The point is, it's up to their membership. So how does that membership make decisions? Well, a community land trust is kind of run like a mini democracy. Its members elect a board who make decisions for the land trust, and that board is typically required to have representatives from different stakeholder groups. A common governance structure is the tripartite model, where 1/3 of the board needs to be made up of residents inside the land trust properties, 1/3 made up of members from the surrounding community, and 1/3 made up of government officials, housing experts, and other stakeholders. Getting this balance of power right is key, because it ensures that a community land trust doesn't only act in the interests of any one stakeholder. This isn't a glorified NIMBY group. I think that's what makes community land trusts such a promising idea for neighborhoods facing gentrification. Through its governance structure and ownership of land, a community land trust can serve as a way for all members of a community to have a say over its future, not just those who can afford to buy property. That also makes a community land trust a very formidable advocacy group. Because they regularly engage with neighborhood stakeholders, community land trusts hold a ton of soft power locally, even if they don't hold a ton of land. Take, for example, the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust in Toronto. For a while, it owned just 3 properties in Parkdale, but ended up being a major voice for the neighborhood, publishing policy papers, conducting research on neighborhood issues, and regularly organizing residents through various committees, classes, and other initiatives. Just last year, the City of Toronto transferred 81 single-family home properties into their portfolio. Finally, I should add that community land trusts aren't just for addressing gentrification. It can ultimately be formed by any group of people who want to come together to acquire land and make decisions for what happens on it. In fact, the first community land trust, called New Communities Inc., was formed by civil rights activists in the 1960s. Their mission was to provide stable housing and farming land for Black residents in Georgia who were being evicted and persecuted for participating in the civil rights movement. Today, it owns 1,600 acres of land just outside the city of Albany. In Vancouver, a new community land trust is being used to right historical wrongs. As the city prepares to tear down these viaducts, part of the lands left over will be leased to the Hogan's Alley Society, a community land trust for the city's Black community, many of whom were displaced by the construction of these viaducts in the 60s. Today, that community land trust plans to develop housing, shops, and a Black cultural center on their new property. And in Owen Sound, Ontario, a community land trust is working to address both the housing and climate crises. The Glassworks Cooperative holds 46 acres of land in a community land trust and plans to use that land to build a net zero community with affordable housing, economic development projects, and environmental programs. So community land trusts are clearly a powerful organizing tool for a variety of reasons. But I want to address the elephant in the room here. How do you pay for all this? If you haven't figured it out by now, the largest challenge for a community land trust is getting the land in the first place. It either has to be donated, provided by the government, or bought. For the Kensington Market Community Land Trust, they were only able to acquire 5456 Kensington Market because of a $3 million forgivable loan from the City of Toronto through Section $300,000 private loan, $250,000 $12,000 mortgage, community donation, $50,000 in affordable housing grants, $3.2 million mortgage. Acquiring properties is a ton of work, and doing this for every property in Kensington Market would be a massive endeavor. There are no shortcuts here. But the reality is that there are no shortcuts when it comes to addressing gentrification. It's a complicated topic with so many differing opinions. While Kensington Market and other culturally significant neighborhoods are valuable to so many people, preserving that value is often at odds with the private real estate market that they're a part of. So, though it might not be easy, the most effective solution I can think of is supporting nonprofit organizations like Community Land Trust to acquire the land outright, taking it outside of a system that prioritizes profit and into a system that prioritizes the community. If we can do it for parks and churches, maybe we can do it for this. One of the ways that we can support community land trusts acquire more properties right now is through a social finance tool called Community Bonds, which one of our partners, Tapestry Community Capital, specializes in. A bond is like an IOU, where an organization borrows money and promises to repay it plus interest at a specific date. A community bond is a bond that helps a nonprofit pursue its mission. Like a regular bond, the nonprofit is borrowing the money and commits to paying it plus interest. But unlike regular bonds, community bonds aren't just about making a financial return, they're also about socio-cultural and environmental returns. For example, in the case of Kensington Market Community Land Trust, a person would invest their money in the organization not just to collect interest, but to see their money making a tangible impact in their own community, like making sure Kensington Market remains the unique and interesting place that it is. And because they offer more than just a financial return, nonprofits can ask to borrow money with lower interest. Community bonds can be a really effective tool for a community land trust for a couple reasons. First off, a community land trust almost always needs to take out a loan anyways to buy properties. A community bond lets them set out their own terms for how they'd like to borrow money and pay out interest to their supporters instead of a traditional lender, keeping the wealth within their own community. Second, most people already invest money in mutual funds, stocks, or cryptocurrencies anyways, so I think the option to invest that money in a local cause you really believe in that benefits your community instead would be a pretty compelling idea to a lot of people. Community land trusts might not always start with a ton of money, but they almost always start with a lot of community support. And through community bonds, they can turn that social capital into actual capital to acquire more properties. The Kensington Market Community Land Trust is actually preparing to launch their own community bond offering right now to develop a fund to acquire more properties and scale up their work. If you'd like to sign up to be on their interest list, visit kmclt.ca, and if you're curious about community bonds in general, check out Tapestry Community Capital. I want to leave the final word for this video with Chi Tam from the Kensington Market Community Land Trust.
Kensington Market is changing. It's going to keep on changing. We're not here to freeze this neighborhood in time. But that change right now is disproportionately being shaped by people who have massive amounts of money and property already. I believe, and a lot of us believe, that Kensington Market is interesting and weird because it's a place where new generations of businesses and artists have come to try out their ideas. It's affordable enough for them to do so. The renters, businesses, artists, and other folks who don't have the means to own property. And that's why we started a community land trust, is because we believe that those people deserve to shape this neighborhood too.
We don't have to pay for gas. It's only funny when we crash. We don't need to buy insurance. The night walk is the...
Okay. I hope that was exciting for everybody. Awesome. So I think now I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're thinking about in Indianapolis. I think, like I said, obviously housing prices have gone up. And I do want to say that community land trusts are just one tool and not a silver bullet to solve the housing crisis. Like they said in the video, the money has to come from somewhere. So unless you have unlimited money, then you're not going to necessarily solve the housing crisis. But I do want to share just a perspective on what benefits the tool might have and how it's impacted other communities that are like Indianapolis. So I think some of you may know that Indianapolis and cities around the country get millions of dollars every year in federal funding. It's either called the Federal Home Program or Community Development Block Grants. These funds often go to fund affordable housing, but like the example that Stephanie gave in her part of the presentation, those dollars that Indianapolis got over the many years, including also the affordable rental housing through low-income housing tax credits, that affordable housing can often go out the window after 5 years. There's only a very short time span on how long the house has to remain affordable.
Right.
And also people just get a kind of a slap on the wrist if they sell it before that affordability period. They might have to pay back $5,000 to $20,000. But if their house appreciated by $200,000 in that time, then they get a big windfall. And it's not to say that's great for that one family, like Stephanie said, but when it comes to creating affordable housing in Indianapolis for our communities, which is really for us, and this goes back to the idea of community wealth, we see housing as an asset for people to live in and not necessarily just, and really not primarily as a financial investment that companies and corporations have used to try and create wealth. So particularly when there are folks who can't afford to rent or buy housing right now. So we would love to share a little bit about what we're thinking for Indy CLT. And this is based off of some of the lessons that we've learned by studying this issue over the last 3 to 4 years that we've been bringing people together through the Indianapolis Homes for All Coalition. So right now we are thinking that we will focus on under 60% of the area median income for residents. So again, that's just a technical term that programs use to talk about eligibility based on your income. So under 60% AMI for a single person, that's $40,000 and some change a year. For a 3-person household, that's $52,000. So that's really what we're focusing. And the reason we're focusing is a couple reasons. One, our goal is to try and provide a homeownership opportunity for folks like myself, Deidre, folks within Kheprw, folks within our community that could otherwise not afford to buy a house. So the goal for what we're thinking of creating is to create a way for people who are locked into renting and paying money to a landlord. Again, there are some good landlords and there are some that aren't good, that are really extracting resources from our community and profiting off of people and often providing substandard housing in some cases. To get them out of that situation where they're being exploited to one where they have stability, where they're able to start building equity and have stability for their family and stability for the larger community too.
Right.
And we can go to the next slide. Half of the renters in Marion County earn $35,000 or less annually, but only an estimated 35% of the county's multifamily rental units are affordable to them. This disproportionately affects households of color. While households of color represent 36% of all households, roughly half of the households earning less than $35,000 in income are Black and 13% are Hispanic. And that's from the 2022 Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana report. Go to the next slide. All right, so what we are looking at, and this is through operating support that the city has committed to Kheprw Institute to help us start up the Indianapolis Community Land Trust, as well as a $400,000 grant from the African American Quality of Life Initiative to start a pilot program. So really what we're looking at is, it's called a Homebuyer Choice Program. These programs exist in cities like Houston, as well as Minneapolis. So the City of Lakes CLT in Minneapolis and Houston CLT and down in Houston. The way the program works, and this goes back to the earlier question about, do you build homes or do you use existing homes? So what we're looking at launching is using existing homes and giving people a choice on where they want to live. In particular, when we're talking to folks in Minneapolis, This is by far their most popular like option because people like to find a home. It's like very similar to a regular home buying experience. They can find the home that's right for them in the community that they want to be in. So the way it would work is there might be a house on the market that's just down the street. I'm actually going to share my screen and just show a quick example. Okay, this house is on sale down the street from us, from where we are right now on the Kheprw campus. It's on for sale for $164,900. But let's say that the family that wants to buy a community land trust home could only afford a mortgage of $70,000. Sorry, we dropped for a second. Can y'all hear me again?
Can
Okay.
hear me now.
Okay, so I'll just start again. This is a house that's on sale down the street. Actual example, $164,000, a 3-bed, 2-bathroom house. It's for $164,000. Let's say that the family that we're working with can only afford a mortgage of $65,000. The community land trust could bring $100,000 to it, and that family's mortgage would be only for $65,000. So their monthly payment would be based on that $65,000. So something like, I don't know exactly, but like 500, 600 bucks a month, 700 maybe. And when they go to sell the home again, it would appreciate based off of that $65,000 amount that they purchased it for. So like 2% every year appreciation plus whatever they paid down on their mortgage, so that this house could be passed on to another community member if they ever decide they want to move. And again, there's no reason that they would have to move. You just qualify once when you buy the property, and you can will it or pass it down to future generations. And I'll stop sharing my screen. And that's about really what we're thinking. We have enough funds for about 4 households to start out with, and would love y'all's input. We have a couple areas that we're thinking about. And again, right now we're thinking of not including repair, so looking for houses that don't require any major maintenance. So not a program for fixer-uppers, really about trying to find homes that are in good condition on the market for people to buy. And again, that has to do partially with the capacity too. As we get started, we want to keep it simple and see how it works. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So we are also opening our screening form soon. There's a QR code on the screen. If you want to pull out your phone and go to the camera, and if you hover your camera over this QR code, you should see a link pop up. So that will go to our Get Involved form. So this is a great place. Also, earlier we mentioned that community land trusts are community governed organizations. So we will be holding sometime in June of this year a membership meeting to elect the board of directors for the CLT. So we love, if y'all are interested and committed to what we're trying to accomplish, to sign up to get involved and potentially become a member or become a resident. And yeah, we anticipate doing the actual application process starting this summer. And you can go next one. We'd love your input on a couple things. One thing that we are considering is whether to put in place a homeowner repair fund. And again, like was asked earlier, most can members apply for residency? Yeah, anyone can apply for residency that qualifies based off the criteria, which right now is, there might be a few other criteria, but the primary one we're looking at is that income limit being under 60% of the area median income. And what we're also considering is, do we include a homeowner repair? One thing we did mention earlier, community land trusts also have a ground lease fee monthly, which helps support the administration of the program. We're looking at $50 a month. That's generally what community land trusts charge per month to help basically keep staff paid and be able to operate the program. But we're also considering whether to add in another $50 to create a savings account for that, for repairs. So particularly, your roof might be repaired in 20 years, and if you don't have $10,000 to pull out of your pocket, it can be challenging. That's one thing we're thinking. You can go to the next slide, then we'll just get questions and any feedback in general.
To take all that stress
I have a question for Brittany. Brittany, good to see you. Is there any risk involved for homeowners to become members of the CLT? No, there's no risk. If so, what are the risks? Yeah, membership at this point is just, and we haven't exactly put together what it's going to look like, but that's based on how the organization is doing. There may be like committees that are started that are part of members who want to be a part of it. Members could be elected to serve on the board, again, depending on certain criteria. I think, yeah, and we can share some more information as that comes out about the details of that. Again, that form, and I'll also put a link in the chat to the webpage where you can fill out the get involved form. Particularly if you're interested in becoming members, we'll definitely send that stuff out in the near future. Okay, so I think we're gonna go ahead and we do have some anticipated needs. So this program will work with realtors, appraisers. Ideally, we're working with banks that have lower interest mortgage. We're talking to a few, but if you have ideas, that'd be great. And partnership with like-minded organizations and community groups. So this is a presentation that we've developed. We'd be happy to come out to your neighborhood association, your church, your organization to share this with folks in your community. To both get feedback and make sure folks in our community know about it. All right, and there's the QR code again. So there's different ways to get involved, request a community presentation, all these other different things. And also it said donate or sell property. That is another thing that we're looking into and that we had someone inquire about.
Right.
Like you can either donate or sell your property at a discount to the CLT to a CLT buyer. So let's say you don't need the whole 500,000 that your home is worth and you want to give a little discount.
Sure.
Then you could get a tax write-off for that discount so that it can become permanently affordable. And again, there'll be more details on that coming soon. Oh, also, if you would like to continue the conversation, we have a monthly Homes for All Indy Coalition meeting that meets on the second Thursdays of the month at 6 p.m. on Zoom, where we give updates to folks primarily about the Community Land Trust and the development, and also get feedback from folks. All right, and that's our email address too, clt@kheprw.org, and that goes to our whole team. So if you email that, you'll hit the right person. Someone will get back to you.
Absolutely.
All right, floor is open.
Hi. So just for clarification, this has yet to be launched in Indy, or like what, you know what I mean? Like what's actually happening?
That's correct. So we've been working to develop it over the last couple of years and are getting really close to actually launching with applications and screenings. So we anticipate by this summer, we'll actually release applications.
Right.
But
So
the form is a required part of the process. So that should be launched in the next couple of weeks. And I can put in the chat as well information about like how to be notified when that screening form is open.
Okay, Rick wants to, and Jasiri, did you have any other questions? And also, if you want to give us any feedback on the presentation, if there are things that were confusing or things that were great, we'd love to hear from you too.
No, I believe that was it. You guys did a great job. I'm going to be sharing this with people. I did fill out the QR thing, so I'll be sharing this with and all that jazz. Good luck to you guys. Hopefully everything runs smooth with the next, few weeks. I'm definitely looking forward to working with y'all.
Sounds good. We'll be talking soon. Appreciate you. And I think there's a question about, okay, good. Yes, the recording will be available on the YouTube channel. Thanks for answering that.
I just want to say that this was a very excellent presentation. This was the first, probably about the third time I've heard it, land trust floating around. So that's what made me interested. And I work with a lot of single mothers, and I know our biggest struggle is finding housing and trying to get them in positions to buy homes because the rent, they cannot absolutely cannot afford to continue to pay rent, childcare, gas, food,
That's right.
and housing. This is impossible, and it's just like pulling teeth for me because I'm teaching basic skills and budget, and I can't even make sense out of a budget to pay rent like this. And so I definitely look forward to hearing more. I did also sign up so that I can work along with you all and at least be a part of the conversation to help gear people towards your program as well, because this is a serious crisis that we're in, and it's not good at all.
Yeah,
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
we appreciate it.
You're welcome. So I'm looking forward, and I did sign up as well.
Great.
All right, are those all of the questions that were in chat that we had? I think so. I don't see any additional ones. And we're right at 5 minutes left. We normally like to wrap up at 7:30. This information was awesome. And I'm excited to see Indianapolis be able to offer this type of home ownership that we see in different parts of the US and in Canada. So I'm definitely excited and hope that the participants in the info session will definitely be able to take this information back to their communities, to their relatives, and be able to benefit from the CLT program. So Stephanie, I think you reached out to our office. I'm not quite sure how the contact happened, but I'm just glad that we did get connected, and I definitely want to stay connected, definitely, and hopefully help you guys on that journey and definitely build a strong partnership with INRC in the process.
Okay, we got one more question come through. Thanks, Aprilli.
Yes.
2 families in one. That's interesting. I think it would be overall household size, and there would be like a primary applicant and a co-applicant. That would be my initial thought, that should be okay as long as the overall income of those families still fell within that area median income of 60% or below.
And Aprilli, you're talking about in the case that two separate families want to get a mortgage and purchase a home together as a part of the CLT. Okay, great. So yeah, and we'll talk to more. That's a great question, and we definitely need to look into how that works. And again, I think if people can get a mortgage together, I mean, I think that probably is going to be the kind of the criteria. But a great question. Yes.
More cooperative. All right. Well, again, if you are not busy on March the 9th, we would love to see you join us at Neighbor Power Indy 2024 at Martin University from 9 o'clock until 3. There are great workshops, resource tables, panel discussion, awards will be presented. We would love to have you come out and be a part of that process. And if not, we will see you for info session in April. And that info session would be on fundraising for community level properties or community level associations. All right. Well, thank you so much and good night. Do we have one more? And hopefully we will see you in March or in April. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry, and thank you everybody. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome.